Hello students, in this video we will learn about the nature and functions of literary criticism. So first we know about the word criticism. What is criticism? It derives from the Greek word kritikos, which was used in 14th century BC. It means a judge of literature. So in 20th century, its place was taken by the term criticus, aimed at the interpretation of text and word and improvement of the works of writer in Greek or Latin. So in English, Dryden used it in the modern sense in his preface to the State of Innocence in 1677, and he writes criticism as it was the first instituted by Aristotle was made a standard of judging well. Today, the term literary criticism aims at the study of works of literature with emphasis on their evaluation of the work as well. So when we talk about the function of criticism, there is a first point that came into our mind, that is judgment. So, in its strict sense, criticism means judgment. The literary critic, therefore, is primarily an expert who uses his special faculty or training to examine the merits and defects of a piece of literary art or the work of the given author and pronounce a verdict upon it. So the primarily function of the literary critic is to arrive at and pronounce a meaningful judgment of value. Then I.A. Richard says to set up as a critic is to set up as a judge of values. Literary criticism, says Rene Wellek, is judgment of book reviewing, and finally the definition of taste of the tradition of what is a classic. Now, second came point is evaluation. When a critic attempts to judge the value of a work of art or literature, he can be said to have evaluated the work. So, evaluative, judicial, or normative criticism attempt to judge the merits of the literature in the relation to literary, social, moral, or other value system. It shows in the glossary for the study of English. T.G. Williams says the function of literary critic is the evaluation of what has been written in terms of aesthetic principle appropriate to literature. Then came the interpretation, it means what critic interpret. So, if judgment be the real end of criticism, interpretation may be employed as a means to that end, and to feel the virtue of a poet or the painter, to disengage it and to set it on forth. So, these are the basically three stages of as a critic duty. Then we came upon the poetry, interpretation of poetry, that is a criticism and interpretation of life, and criticism is an interpretation of that interpretation. So, the chief function of criticism is to enlighten and stimulate by the proper interpretation of work of literature. And if a great poet makes us partakers of his larger sense of the meaning of life, a great critic may make us a partaker of his larger sense of meaning of literature. Like Walter Patel aptly says, criticism is an art of interpreting art. Like Carlyle regard for criticism, it stands like an interpreter between the inspired and uninspired, between the prophet and those who hear the melody of his word and catch the glimpse of their material meaning, but to understand not their deeper import. Like Matthew Arnold defines criticism as a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. Now we talk about the nature of criticism. First is criticism and creation. To some people, criticism appear to be secondary, parasitic, and inferior to creation. And it is stated that the creative artist is personal and subjective, whereas a critic is impersonal, dispassionate, and detached. Though the creative and critical faculties are logically distinct psychologically, they are interfused with each other. And there is a kind of criticism which exists before art itself, just as there is a kind of criticism which follows art, taking art as its subject matter. There is no work of art, says Scott James, which is not preceded by criticism. So there must be an criticism in any work of art, whether it's writing, art form, visual, or written, any text, anything should be the work of art. Thus, there is no antipathy but close affinity between the critic and the creative artist, and both poet and critic draw their light from the sun of the beauty and truth. and we may be glad of both. So, according to Scott James, the true critic is an ally of the artist. A good critic has some interest at heart as the artist possesses. His never failing sympathy and intuition qualify him to speak on behalf of the artist. Alexander Pope beautifully says both must, alike from heaven, derive their light, those born to judge as well as those to write. Then we came to the scientific accuracy of literary criticism. It is a debatable question. Are literary criticism is an art or exact science? So, critics like I.A. Richards and Professor Moulton aim at scientific accuracy and scientific impartiality in their literary criticism. And according to D.H. Lawrence, criticism can never be a science. In first place, criticism is much too personal, and secondly, it is concerned with the values that science ignores. Like touchstone method, we have earlier discussed, a touchstone is an emotion, not a reason. Alexander Pope says in his essay on criticism, a perfect judge will read each work of wit with the same spirit that is its author writ. Then, what are the qualities of good critic? So, Hume believed that agreement among ideal critic on aesthetic issues constituted the true standard of taste and beauty. And the ideal critic possesses five attributes: strong sense united to delicate sentiments, improved by practice, perfected by comparison, and cleared of all prejudice. So, the good critic must have the superior sensibility, and he must also have wide erudition. A good critic must be entirely impersonal and objective. He must try to discipline his personal prejudice and whims. A critic must also have a highly developed sense of tradition. An ideal critic must have the knowledge of technical details of a poem, its genesis and setting, etc. So, the analysis and comparison methodologically with sensitiveness and intelligence, curiosity, intensity of passion, and infinite knowledge, all these are necessary to the great critic. Like Remy de Gourmont, a critic task is to convert personal impression to an appearance of an abstract and universal idea. So I hope you understand the exact points of the nature of literary criticism and how it functions and what are the viewpoints of different writers and authors on it. So please like my video and share it to your fellow friends. And if you want something else, so please uh, message me on my chat box. Thank you for watching.